Rod North here from BourseTV, where we illuminate the success of companies doing amazing things in the marketplace. We have a very interesting company called SwitchDin.com that is going to bring a bright future of abundant energy brought about by the energy transition, supercharged by software-managed DER, distributed energy resources. In plain English, this refers to the often smaller generation units that are located in the consumer side of the meter. Mario Vecchio has joined us in the studio today. He is Chief Executive Officer of SwitchDin.com. He has over 25 years of experience and is a distinguished business leader and trusted strategic advisor to businesses from a broad spectrum of industries, from energy, technology, education, healthcare, mining, transportation, financial services, to government in the Asia-Pacific region. He is responsible for driving SwitchDin.com's growth and international expansion while establishing and maintaining strong partnerships with customers and industry stakeholders who are involved in the clean energy transition. Some of the companies that Mario has worked with during his career include Cisco Systems, Siemens, Juniper Networks and Amdocs. Welcome, Mario, to BourseTV.
Thanks for having me.
We might start by just telling us a bit about, we love the renewable energy sector and we've got a lot of people very interested in that and obviously looking to invest in that. So just tell us a bit about your background in that space and how things have evolved from SwitchDin's point of view.
Sure. Well, from my background, I've always been in technology my whole career. So that's all I know is technology. And from a SwitchDin perspective, we are a software company. We are a renewable energy software company. And the energy industry globally is probably one of the last bastions of industries that haven't been disrupted by software technologies. And now that course of action is in train, and it's happening not just here in Australia, but it's happening globally. And it's happening for a number of reasons. First reason is the technology is now available. Secondly, governments are driving industry to move the energy transition along quicker. And part of the electrification of the world is looking at ways where they can do this in an economic way and in a way that's going to work for people at scale. And so software is the technology that eats industries, and it is effectively going to eat this industry from a transition perspective. So software is going to take over a lot of aspects, I should say, on how energy is managed, moved around from an energy transition perspective. So we are literally at the heart of the energy transition when it comes to managing the energy assets.
And I guess you're seeing that this is evolving because we're still very much in the early stages, I suppose, of the world coming to terms with what we need to do in this space. Is that how you would see it?
Well, the interesting thing, Rod, is that, and most Australians don't understand this at this point in time, Australia is the world leader when it comes to renewable energy transition, especially around solar. We have the market today is, I think, in the 30% range of all households having solar on their roof, and they're predicting by the end of next year that'll be 50%. Now, per head of population, that's the most of anywhere in the world.
And what's been the catalyst for that? Is it government driven? Is it council driven?
It's a number of factors that have combined at the same time. One is incentives for people to do that, and the state government and federal government incentives that have been around for quite a while to do that. Secondly is that the cost of the solar panels and inverters and now batteries has dropped. The cost of a solar panel over the last 2 decades has dropped 99%.
It's made it more affordable for consumers.
Very affordable for consumers. And lastly, combine those two factors with a third factor that energy prices have continued to climb. And now most households can buy a solar system with a payback of 3 to 5 years.
Yes, but in the past it would have been a much longer payback, so therefore big capital investment.
Correct.
Waiting a long time and then sort of marginal in terms of whether you got the value or not, or you realise the value.
Correct. And now with a payback for most people of 3 to 5 years, it's a no-brainer.
And then I suppose the technology over that period of time, are we talking 5 or 10 years since this sort of started to?
It's really in the last 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah, in fact, probably 3 years that the technology now that's available for people to transition even quicker has been in place.
And the knowledge that consumers had has been an exponential learning curve,
yes,
effectively?
Absolutely. And typically people have started with solar and now they're looking to migrate to battery technologies as battery technology continues to drive down lower and lower and lower. Add to that EVs on top, and now you're starting to see an interesting mix of what's happening in the marketplace and why we have become a dominant player in as a country in this space. I can go to conferences around the world, and in the power industry or in the energy industry, and they will immediately say, "You're Australia. You guys are number one in what you do."
And is there any particular thing that happened that made us realise how important solar and renewables and wind and all those things are in Australia? What was the sort of trigger for people to sort of take it up?
Well, it happened 10 years ago with a storm in Adelaide.
Yep.
And the government of Adelaide were not happy that they'd been disconnected from the grid.
They lost power, didn't they?
They lost power. And at the time, Elon Musk rode in on his white horse and said, "I'm going to give you the world's biggest battery," and he did it and delivered on it. And in credit to the South Australian government, they took that on with a vengeance and started the process of completely changing how they run their grid. We were lucky that as a company, we were there right at that time with the South Australian government and helped build a lot of the software technologies that they use today inside managing their renewable energy environment. And per head of population, they're number one in the world from the city of Adelaide.
And of course, regional areas too, you know, the Bendigos, but just in the context of Victoria, for example, are key areas too that probably at different times need that type of energy opportunity too, whether it's solar. I mean, there's been talk of things like floating solar and using perhaps existing mining sites for that purpose to repurpose those for renewables.
Yeah, you're seeing companies now go into older mining sites and put battery systems in, large-scale battery systems into those mining sites. So we're seeing a plethora of people investing and governments investing in what we call grid scale and then what we call DER, which is the distributed energy side of the business. So you've got two parts of the business. You've got grid scale, which is the high end of the market. And the market really splits itself into three parts. One is high voltage, which is the big towers you see typically out in the country. And then there's medium voltage, and then there's low voltage, which are the poles and transformers that connect our homes and businesses up together. And we focus very much in on that low and medium voltage part of the market where the distributed assets sit.
So tell us a bit more. Let's drill down to SwitchDin.com and where you see yourselves uniquely positioned, you know, unique product advantage, unique position advantage, that type of thing, compared to what else is happening out there, so people get a bit of a context of where you sit.
So firstly, let's talk about the problem. And the problem is that the energy grids for the world were never designed for distributed energy resources. They were designed 100 years ago for one central generation point, typically a coal-fired plant or a hydro or whatever the generation source is, and push that energy out to our businesses and homes. And that's typically the way it was always designed and was designed. But then came along of putting solar on homes, in businesses, battery systems, wind systems outside of the central generation point, and it creates a huge problem for the distribution companies. It's a bit like the energy grid was designed for one-way traffic, that's generation to us, instead of pushing energy from us to them.
Yes, I'm with you. That's a good metaphor for it, isn't it?
Yes, and it's a bit like getting in your car and putting it in reverse and driving down the freeway at 100 kilometres an hour. It'll work, but eventually your car's going to blow up.
Or you might hit someone.
So the grid was never designed to do that. And so it creates problems for people. And the two problems that we solve is one for the transmission guys, and it's a thing called the balancing the power grid.
Yes.
Because if you have the grid unbalanced, that's where you get blackouts and brownouts, right? And so if you've got too much energy flowing back in from solar, and let's face it, the flow of energy from solar happens at lunchtime every day because that's the peak time.
Yes.
As long as you've got a good sunny day. So you can't store it. You've got to use it. That's the issue. Or when the wind is blowing, right? And so basically, they need to balance how much of that they can take compared with their baseload from their central generation plants, and we help them balance that power and manage that power flow within their transmission networks. So it gives them, it minimises their risk and gives them trust in being able to manage the flow of energy at peak points during the day. Now, what batteries then do on top of that is they're effectively the soak, right? So if you think of it as like a big sponge, at that peak time in the day, if batteries should soak up the excess power from solar, and then there's a whole market participation out there that figures out when can I sell that back, when I can get more money for it. So there's two parts of the equation. One part is the people who need to manage the risk. That's the transmission guys, the poles and wires people. And we help them manage that risk and balance their grid. Our software does that. And then there's effectively the money makers on the other side. And that is people who want to have those assets of solar and batteries and wind and store it or consume it and then sell it back into the market. So we balance. Our software stack sits on both sides of that fence, and we give them unique features and functionalities to be able to do that, not only for one battery, but for thousands of batteries across the market.
So it sounds like it's a very, very big market and a growing market. So from your point of view, from SwitchDin.com's point of view, you've got a lot of work to do, and that obviously the business has been going for how many years?
Coming on to 10 years.
Coming on to 10 years, and obviously one of the things you're looking to do at the moment is raise some additional capital. To help grow your business even further, and obviously talk a bit about competitors and potentially as well. That'd be interesting. But tell us about what you're going to do with the capital and how that'll go to good use.
Sure. So first, one of the first important points is that we now understand that our products are unique to the world, that very few people have the scale of what we do, because there's one thing to have functionality, there's another thing to have scale. And a good example of that is, if you wanted to go out and build an Uber app, you could do that quite simply. But to have 40,000 cars every 10 minutes get into an Uber, doing that at scale and having it run is a completely separate science and art form.
And that type of situation has got a big first mover advantage, I suppose.
Correct.
Which is probably where you sit too. Is that right?
We are at scale that higher than anyone else in the world today.
Okay.
Only because Australia is ahead of the curve. And so therefore we are ahead of that curve as well with what we've had to do for our customers. So what are we going to do with the money? Firstly, we have products. And we have revenue and we have customers. So we are...
Tick, tick, tick.
And now we are continuing to... We will use these funds to continue to commercialise our products and scale those products into the international markets, because we have concluded that we don't have to change any of our software to make that work in Romania, or make it work in Germany, or make it work in North America, or make it work in the UK. So we can now take that product pretty much off the shelf as it is today and have it work in all of those.
As an international rollout?
As an international rollout.
Okay. So
we have built partnerships now with a number of key partners. Shell Energy is one. Another company called AutoGrid is another. Another company, Carrier Air Conditioning, is another company, which are going to help us scale out our software to the world. AWS, Amazon Web Services. We have a strategic partnership with AWS on that front, and all of those people are helping us get to market internationally. We already
partners
as partners. Yes, we already have. Customers internationally, all that being a small part of our business today, but we're in the process of scaling out our operations in Europe first and then North America.
Well, it's a great success story for an Australian-based company to basically evolve and then look to grow internationally. And, obviously you're going to be getting a few frequent flyer miles up over the course of coming weeks, coming months, I would imagine, because obviously you'll be travelling a fair bit internationally as you continue to grow that market. And then at the moment, you're looking to raise a total of, tell us a bit about that.
We're looking to do a raise of 20 million right now, which will see us through for the next 24 to 36 months.
And through what sort of instrument are you doing the cap raise? Talk about that.
Be equity.
Equity in the business.
Is,
And tell us a bit about the company structure itself.
The company structure itself is a private company with two major shareholders, one of them being an Indigenous company.
Right. Yep.
And so we're in a fortunate position where we have two major shareholders that have funded the business to date. There are some small other minority shareholders. So we are able to move quickly with new investors to come in. We don't have a lot of shareholder baggage to deal with doing a capital raise.
And is there an ultimate exit for the business? Is it something that might be acquired by someone else, or are you going to look to list potentially? What's your is there an exit strategy?
Yeah, we don't have an ambition to list. At this point in time, we think that, although we won't count that out, but we think that the most logical exit for us will be one of the big players in the market that will say this is a real business and the market is now big enough for us to participate in. But let me just give you a couple of numbers, and that is that the globe is going to spend $13 trillion to do the energy transition. The segment that we play in is going to grow to $300 billion a year in software.
Big.
Globally across the world. So it's going to be a big market. It's growing very rapidly. And I can't underemphasize the point that software now will ooze its way into every part of the energy cycle and will be a dominant player in how we proceed with the energy transition.
Well, there's a real opportunity then for investors now to get on board and come part of your journey for SwitchDin.com.
Absolutely.
To see the growth continue since the evolution of the business 10 years ago to the next 3 to 5 years, which sound like they're going to be a very good and prosperous time for you, because obviously renewable energy and the way in which the world's embracing it, as you said, Australians have been amazing in the way they've done that, which they seem to have done a lot of other technologies in biotech sectors and all of that. So big tick to the Australians, and obviously all around the world we may see the same thing happen. Are there any other countries that sort of stand out like Australians?
Some of the Nordic countries are advanced, but they have different issues. They typically have a lot of thermal power. But no, the short answer is no. And but I think for investors, the important piece to say is that we've moved past our research and development phase. We are now in commercial deployment, and we're now in final commercialisation and productisation and scaling out phase. We're ready to scale is basically where we're at now. We know we have product market fit. We know we have product category fit. We have customers in all of those sectors. And so now the next investment cycle is for scale out.
Well, Mario, congratulations on what you've been able to achieve in your role as a CEO. And we'll certainly look forward to talking again on BourseTV about how things progress with the capital raising and the use of those funds, and how you're able to expand into all those international markets that are at your fingertips there.
Thanks, Rod.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mario. For more information about SwitchDin.com, contact Shane White from Equity Storyline at corporate@equitystory.com.au.